Good vach. We're learning as is chusr for shlema filan chayi baserach. We are, I believe, on daf mem aleph amid aleph, 9 lines from the top. Ton rabban. Talis kfula chayeves betzitzis. A talis that is kafel is doubled over as chayev betzitzis. So what this means is, it's talking about imagine take a long thin talus and you a long thin baguette, a rectangular baguette, and you fold it in half, and then you take the folded end and put it over your head like a talus. You make it into a square, let's say, and you take the folded end and you put it over your head, and then he puts the talus on that folded end. So he has 4 corners sticking down the back and 2 over his head, and he puts 2 on one of the ends in the back and 2 right near his head. So we say it's psula, because that's not a real corner. That's a temporary corner.
Saying by
But
folding it over.
He tried to make it that it should be a corner, but it's not. So it's chayev tzitzis. He still has to put tzitzis on the remaining two corners. Rav Shimon Haifa. Rav Shimon disagrees. He says it's potter. It doesn't need a tzitzis. That itself is considered, the fact that he folded it over is enough to make it no, I'm sorry. It's the other way around. So he says, I'm sorry, it's the other way around. The Tanakama says if you put on those corners, that will be a kosher tzitzis. Rav Shimon says it's not. It's potter. It doesn't need. He says that's not a place to put tzitzis. You put it on the ends.
So it's potter doesn't mean that it's potter, but the ganzen. It just means that you don't put it on the temporary corners.
Right. Yeah. So they asked this kasha. The achronim ask, why are you saying it's potter? What it really means to say is it's puzzle. That's what it really should be. It's puzzle if you put in the middle. Right. B'shavin shemsh kafla v'tafra. But even if Shimon would be maskim that if you folded it over and then you sewed it into place, shechayeves. That in that case you put the tzitzis, the tzitzis on those corners. As we're going to see later on, if you have a beggar that's more than 4 corners, at least according to some shitas, you mechuyev on to put on 4 of the corners. So in this case, if you fold it over those corners, you chayiv. Those are amongst the corners that you'd be chayiv to put a tzitzis on. L'chayr, you should be able to put it on others as well. I mean, what's strange about this Gemara is it would be a little bit easier if we would understand the Gemara that it's talking about where it only has 2 corners, and then he folded it over, and then he made it another 2. That's what you want to understand the Gemara. That's the way I understood it when I learned it. But then I continued learning to the end, and I realized, as we're going to see soon, that that's not what the Gemara understands.
What are you saying? You have 4 corners, and then you fold it over to have
to add an extra 2. You add an extra 2. So that is what we're talking about. Although it would be easier to read this first part, like we wouldn't have Rafal's question that why does it say chayeves and ptura if we were talking about that it was 2 corners and these are the third and the fourth corner, then it would make sense. But that is not the case, as we'll see. Frek the Gemara, Tafra Pshita. If he sewed it, then it's a full-fledged corner. What do you have to tell me a chiddush that's a corner that you could put tzitzis on? So we're talking about where you used loose stitches that they use when they're in the middle of sewing just as a guide, and then you put the real stitches in. We're saying even that is enough that it holds it together, that it's considered a corner. Rabba Bar Huna ikl lebei Rava Bar Rav Nachman. Rabbi Huna went to the house of Rabbi Bar Nachman Chazia to have a michsi talis kfula. V'ramal echute iluya kfela. He was wearing a talis that was folded over, and he put the chutin on the folded part. and he unfolded it. And when you unfold it, right, then he took the whole beged and he put it over his head toward the front and the back. And then when you unfold the beged, you have talis and you have tzitzis in the middle of the beged, not next to a corner. They were just hanging near his head. He said, this is not the corner that the Torah describes. The Torah describes putting on the corner, and now when you unfold it, it's in the middle of the beged. Also, Shadia, he went and he took it off. And he took another beged. He took a different beged, either one that with tzitzis or one that didn't require tzitzis. So, but he wasn't satisfied. He said, "You haven't done enough. You took off the invalid tzitzis." Amalei misavres chayvus gavrahu. Do you really believe that this is a chayva on the person? Chayvus talasu zil romula. He said, "This is not. This is a very interesting Gemara. It's a very brisk Gemara. All right, it says the requirement of tzitzis is not on the person. It's incumbent on the talis. We'll see a machlekes later on about whether a talis sitting in someone's closet needs to have tzitzis put on it. If you have a beged of daled kanfos, is it a requirement on the talis that you can't own a beged with four corners without tzitzis? Sort of like a mica, right? That you can't have a porch, you can't have a roof without putting a fence on it. It's not on the person, it's on the object. So he said it's a chayiv on the object that it can't be without tzitzis, and you don't have the four tzitzis. Zil Romulo. You have to go put on it. Lemrim Sayele. I'll bring you a raya. This is his conception, his understanding of how the mitzvah of tzitzis works. That it's incumbent on that the tzitzis itself is mechuyev, the beged is mechuyev to have tzitzis, and not that a person who's wearing a beged it's on him to wear the tzitzis. Where do I know that? We had from a Gemara we had before, Brisa, Chasidim Harishonim, the earlier Chasidim, the holy ones, Kivin Sha'argu Bashalish, once they wove three tvachim, or three hands breadth, 3 fingers. Hayumatilim bat cheles, they would put on a cheles. And we understood this earlier, that means when they made a talis or a beged that came within 3 tvachim of the end, they were assiduous, they went very quickly, and they quickly put on tzitzis, even though they hadn't yet reached the full weaving that they wanted to make, because it already became mechoyev. Once it was within 3 etzbayis of where they were going to end the beged, they could already put on the tzitzis. They put it on immediately. But if it's on the person, why would be such a rush to do it? So, Weistais, they were concerned that they have a beged that's mechoyev in tzitzis, and they're not putting it on it. So you see that it's a chayvis, what is it called? It's a chayvis talasu. And for the Gemara, no. Shani chasidim nemachmir yanafshayu. That is not a raya. They were they were more machmir. We can't bring any rayas. They have all kinds of machshavas and intentions that we can't learn from their actions. Upliga the malacha, and he's arguing on a malach. The malacha ashkele Rav Katina. A malach found Rav Katina the michsei sadina. He was wearing a linen beged with which we said before. We don't put cheles on a beged of linen because whatever we had the whole cheshbon that it's going to end up being a possibility of people then wearing something which is made out of a blue dye that's going to then be a shatnez problem. So anyway, he was wearing without the tchelis because that's the din. Amalei katina sadina b'kaita b'sarmela b'sivusa b'sitva. We look what you do during the summer. You wear a linen 4-cornered beged, which doesn't get tchelis. You just put four linen threads on it, and in the winter you wear a beged with rounded off corners that doesn't need tzitzis at all, tzitzis shel tchelis mateilas. You never have a chance to wear tzitzis with tchelis on it. Amalei, anishtoya essay. He asked him, "What am I going to get? Am I going to get punished? Am I going to get a einish for not being mekayim an essay? What do you want from me? Listen, I'm not mechuyev. I'm doing it all according to the letter of the law. That if you wear a linen beged, you don't wear tchelis. Listen, if you're wearing a beged that's rounded edges, there's no tzitzis on it. Why are you telling me that I'm doing something wrong by avoiding having to put on tchelis?" Amalei bisman deikarischa an shina. He said, "No, you're going to lamaisa when the Rebbe Shalom is going to be angry. He's going to look who is the guy who avoided being mekayim my mitzvahs tzitzis." The Dr. Mar, if you say it's mutal on the person, then we can understand if this is coming back to our original question. If the mitzvah of tzitzis is that a person, the Rebbe Shalom wants each person to wear tzitzis. So if he's arranging things in a way that he's not fully being mekayim the mitzvah tzitzis, the truth is he's wearing it with big day lovan, but he's not wearing it with big day tcheles. With tcheles. So if it's a chayvus gavra, so he's not doing things. He's not being mekayim what the Rebbe Shalom wants him mekayim. Ali Amrit chayvus talasu. If you say that if somebody even has a four-cornered beged in his closet, he has to put a tzitzis on it because it's not on him; it's on the chayfetz. Halay mechayvo. How can you say that? How can you say that the Rebbe Shalom, when he gets angry, he's going to punish him? It's not really him. It has to do with the beged. Zak the Gemara. The Gemara says, "Listen, the Gemara is not maskim to this theological argument. Elamai chayvus gavrahu." Gemara says, "Memanavshach." If that's the way you're thinking about it, if you're saying that if it's a chayvus chefza, if it's a chayva on the talis, then he shouldn't be punished for avoiding being over on it. So if you say it's a chayvus gavrahu, you need to chayva rachmana ki mechse talis nabas chiyuva ki mechse talis labas chiyuva mi mechayva rachmana. The Torah is only mechayev him to be mekayim the mitzvah to wear tzitzis when he is wearing something that requires it, but something that does not require it, he doesn't wear the tzitzis. So what are you the manavshach? Even if it's a chayvus gavra, how can you say someone the Rebbe Shalom when he's angry is going to punish him for avoiding wearing the tzitzis? The Torah said you only have to wear tzitzis when you wear something of three corners. If you do four corners, if you wear something with three corners, you're not chayiv. If you wear with two corners, if you wear something that's made out of leather, you're not chayiv. So, or if you sleep all day and you just wake up at night, so you don't have a chance to wear tzitzis, whatever it is, however you get out of it, or if you get born a girl's punished for not wearing tzitzis. Moshe doesn't punish them. B'shas riska, they're not mechayiv. So what does it make a difference? It's a person that arranges things. It sort of reminds me, it's a very difficult concept to understand, and it reminds me of something from my years as a tax lawyer, that the IRS will tell you, you can't do a tax shelter. You can't do something to avoid taxes. But you're allowed to arrange your affairs in such a way that it will reduce your taxes. Now, it's impossible to draw that distinction. And nobody, tax lawyers make a lot of money by arguing on both sides of the issue. I mean, they always argue on one side issue. They say, I'm just arranging my affairs in a way that minimizes taxes. It's the same thing over here. You're arranging your affairs in a way that you don't end up having mechayiv tzitzis. So, Zak the Gemara, Elahachi ka'amalei. The Gemara changes it. Titzdaki, which Rashi explains is it's an unusual word. It means, Tidatzki lemifta nafshach mitzitzis. They were complaining to him, it doesn't become you. So Rashi, Elahachi ka'amalei, like 4 lines up in the narrow lines. Titzdaki lemifta atzamcha mitzitzis. Tevakish tachbulos lifter atzamcha mitzitzis. You're looking for strategies to avoid tzitzis. So the problem isn't that he's being over in some way, but they're saying you're supposed to be a chashav yid it doesn't become you. It's not appropriate for you to try to avoid being Mekayim and mitzvah. You should look for opportunities, not look for opportunities to not be Mekayim mitzvahs. Amar Rav Tuiv bar Kisna Amar Shmuel. Kli kufsa chayav betzitzis. He says, if you have a kli that's placed if you have a tzitzis that's placed in a closet, in a box, it's not being used, a four-cornered bagad, you have to put tzitzis on it. He's saying it's a chayvus talis. Umoide Shmuel bizakein she'asa l'chvoide sheptura. Someone who made a four-cornered beggar to use as a shroud, as tachrichim, that does not require tzitzis. My timer. Why is that? Because the Torah says, where do we know the mitzvah of tzitzis? On the ksus that you're going to wear. And shrouds are not coming to cover him. He's not being going to wear them as clothing. Amar Rachman, high love l'chsuya vida. And these are not made to wear. However, the Gemara notes, certainly, when you bury him, you have to put tzitzis on tachrichim, mishum loyig l'rosh, cheref aso, oiseyu. The pasuk says, and I think it's a Mishlei, that when you taunt someone, loyig l'rosh, when someone who's poor, when you say to him, "Look what I have," the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to be upset. It's insulting the Rebbeinu Shalom. That means a person, when he lost his chance to do mitzvahs, we don't point it out to him. When someone's a nifter, we don't point out to him his inability to do mitzvahs. So therefore, we don't bury him in a four-cornered beged without tzitzis. But he's not being mekayim the mitzvah, so therefore, since it's not made to be worn for a mitzvah, therefore, it's no chiyuv to put the tzitzis on earlier.
So we don't bury him with tzitzis?
We do, but it's not a kiyum of mitzvah tzitzis. It's just a kiyum of not insulting him. It means he's not wearing it for the mitzvah.
Because he can't do the mitzvah.
He can't do the mitzvah anymore. He's not capable of doing a mitzvah after, but we do it for us. That means it's a chiyuv on us that we shouldn't be loyig l'rosh. We shouldn't be taunting him by putting on him. Now all of a sudden he's not able to do a mitzvah, so we immediately put on him a baguette of 4 kamfas. So it's on us. So then, since he doesn't have the mitzvah of tzitzis, therefore it's not going to. He's going to wear it, but he's not going to be wear it as a mitzvah, and therefore it doesn't have the din of that it has to have tzitzis.
Is that why they say we should hucking at tzitzis by a levaya? Because therefore we're not showing the nifter. We could still do mitzvahs, but you can't because you're no longer here.
Well, I'm going to tell you this with a story about our Uncle Feivel. That by my father's levaya, he was sitting on the floor in the funeral home. Someone asked the Rav, why is Rabbi Cohn sitting on the floor? Usually by the levaya,
you don't sit on the floor.
The people who are sitting don't sit on the floor. He said,
right.
He's a kohen, he doesn't know what to do. So, which I don't think is true about Rav Feivel. He probably looked it up. But whatever the case may be, you're asking me why people tuck in their tzitzis by a levaya. I have no idea what people do by a levaya. So,
all right, because you're a Kohen. I forgot. Right.
Is this something that people do?
I think it's known that you're supposed to. I also help with Mace Mitzvah, so from what I understand, you're supposed to tuck in your tzitzis because the nifter can't perform the mitzvah anymore. Can't perform mitzvahs anymore. So therefore, we shouldn't be mevayish the nifter by having our tzitzis out, showing that. Look what we can do that you cannot.
Yeah, I'm sure it's from this Gemara. It sounds exactly like this Gemara.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not only by the Levi, even when you just visit Beis HaChaim, that's the minute to do that.
I'm sure you're right. I'm sure that's the reason. I'm sure it's from this. It's right on point. So you can tell me everything. Every time there was like one time I went there. And it was I was very distracted, so I didn't really pick up on what people were doing. Amar Chava Amar Yehuda. talis shenikra, a talis that ripped. Chutz l'shalish, if it's more than 3 finger breadths, bring 3 etzbois from the edge, from the corner of the beged, then you could tie it up. Taich shalish, but within 3 lo yitfa. You can't tie it up. As we're going to see, there's a chashash that if you sew it up, there'll be strings hanging down, and you'll come to use those strings, and that will cause problems. That will be described. Tanya nami hachi, talish and nikra chutz l'shalish yitfer taich shalish within 3. Reb Meir oimer lo yitfer. Like we said, Reb Meir says you can't be tied. V'chamarim yitfer. B'shavin, Reb Meir doesn't hold of this. The Chacham don't hold of this issue. You certainly can't do is take, even if you have a large piece of cloth from a different talus, a different tzitzis, a different talus, let's say, that has on it the tchelis, and makamachu bot tchelis b'toyleba. That everyone agrees, because that's going to be the mitzvah is to attach the tzitzis to a beged. But over here, you're taking a piece of a beged that already has the tzitzis on it and attaching it. V'shavin, well, I'm just going to finish the yomit. V'shavin shemevi tchelis im'alkamacha v'toyleba. But they do agree that you can, under certain circumstances that we'll explain later, we're going to go back and do the Rashi on this to explain the reason. But they both agree that you could, if you have tzitzis from a different pair of tzitzis, not the beged together with the tzitzis on it, but just the tzitzis, and we'll explain later on a case where the tzitzis got worn out, you can take it and put it onto a different beged. So Rashi, let's see the Rashi, chutz l'shalosh l'mayla mishalosh etzbois b'sas haknaf, 3 lines into the wide Rashi, into the wide lines, yitvar. So now here Rashi is going to explain the reason. V'loy chayshinin dilma payish midi min chut hatfira. When it's more than shalosh, we're not worried that a thread is going to come out from where you're there's going to be like a thread coming out that's going to be left over after you sew it. And you're going to leave it there. And you just add to it, that's going to be one chut, and then you're going to add another 3, and you're going to say that's all my tzitzis. And that's going to be tasav aloy min asli. The chutz legimel lechazul litloy tzitzis k'damin lekama. The reason why we're not worried about it happening when it's outside of 3 etzbois is because that's not a place of tefillin, of tzitzis. But if it's within 3, then according to at least Reb Meir, we answer it because of the chashash that maybe you'll come to leave it, and then it will be tasav aloy min asli. It's not that you put it there l'shem tzitzis, but you put it there when you were sewing and it was just left there. Okay, let's continue on Amid Beis. Ubelvad shelo yehei mifsekes. Right, this is Rashi says that the chutin have to be not ripped. If they're ripped off, then it's not going to be, like we said, you could take a tzitzis from another place. That was what we just said, but it can't be ripped. And Tais was asked the obvious question: Sarachin, my pirush, my ashmina. What is he telling you? Obviously, we learned the dinim that if it's ripped at the beginning, that you can't make tzitzis with something that's ripped, that it doesn't stick out. We said a din that you have gardimin, that if there's only a little bit left, if you made a full tzitzis and then afterward it ripped, that it's okay. But what would be the hava? I mean, that you could take a tzitzis that's already ripped and put it on. In any case, shamamina matir mi beged lebeged. Back to Gemara. This seems to indicate that you can take a tzitzis from one beged, untie it, and put it on another beged. As we're going to see, this is not so pashut. It's a machlekes. We're going to see it's a machlekes that maybe it's disrespectful to the first tzitzis to untie it. It's being used for a mitzvah, and you untie it. Even if you're planning to do it for another mitzvah, it's a machlekes of whether you can do so. So Gemara says, from the fact that we said you can do that, you can take a tzitzis from one tzitzis, l'chayre, it's a raya in this machlekes hamarayim. So Gemara dilma di'i beloy maybe just means when we said here that you can take from one tzitzis and put it on another, it's talking about a worn out pair of tzitzis. So certainly it's better to take the worn out tzitzis that's not usable. If the talus got worn out, that you can't use it as a talus anymore. So you take the tzitzis and put it on something else. That's better than just putting it into geniza. Tanaraban, talis shekula tchelis, a talis that the entire beged is tchelis. So as we've seen, we said there's a din of knaf min knaf, and that tells you that the one that's not tchelis has to be the same of the same sort as the beged. The beged normally is white, so therefore there's a din to have lavan. From that comes a din that the beged is supposed to be a combination of two things, tchelis and lavan. So you have a talis that's called tchelis. So now, what are you going to do for the? Normally, we say that the white part you have to do lavan for the lavan part, but if you do tchelis on the tchelis part, then it's going to be the same. It's all going to be the same. And like we said, the cheshbon is we want to have them separate. That's what the mashmayis from the fact that we say knaf min knaf. That tells you that there should be two types of tzitzis. So we say kol minitzavoinim beturaba chutz mikla ilam. You can use any kind of color, any kind of coloring, except for this kla'ila, a certain dye from a tree that makes a blue that's similar to tchelis. Zak Rashi, chutz mikla ilan. Rashi says two pshachtim. First of all, the dami l'tchelis v'zimnin the mazmin la l'inish. It's similar to tchelis, and someone who buys this beged of tcheles, and it has 4 strings that all look like they're tcheles, even though only 2 are tcheles and 2 are kla'ilin. You'll sell it to someone else, and the sava the chol tcheles. I think it's all tcheles. He'll take 2 of these strings, the nice and sham in love, and he'll take it on another tzitzis and put it together with linen strings. B'tachas elu yitin lavan, and he'll put 2 lavan onto this one. So one of the 2 is going to end up being, we don't know which 2 are tchelis. I don't know why he's saying it's only going to be one of the 2, because I have a kasha on Rashi. Rashi is saying you can have one of the 2 is going to be 2 tchelis, and one of them is going to be 2 kla'ilon together with lavan. The one that's 2 kla'ilon together with lavan is going to be shatnez, because you're not being yotzet cheles with it. I don't know why he's not worried that you'll leave one in the old beged and one in the new one. I think his point is that at a minimum one of them is going to be over on shatnez. I don't even know why it has to be like that. Why could it just be that he's going to, if one of them rubs out, he'll put a lavan in it, or one gets cut off. It seems needlessly complicated. So that's what Rashi says. For now. Zak the Gemara. Bimhevi kasha. He shouldn't do that, but if he did it, it's kasha, because the vaila, it's takana, but in the meantime, he's been geared to the mitzvah. Amar Nachmi Yitzchak. In any case,
We skip.
I skipped. I'm sorry.
Meisvei.
Meisvei. Talis ain't poiteba elamina. A talis, the only thing that patters it is its own of the same sort that it was made with. That means the part that's not chelas has to be the same as the beg. Talis shakulat chelas. So what do you do in the case of a talis shakulat chelas? Maybe chelas. B'davar acha. You bring tcheles and davaracha and you put on it, and in that case, there's no mashmoyis of what the other one should be, right? There's no restriction, because you don't have to, we want it to be a different kind, but kalailon lo yevim heavy kasha. We said before, chutz miklailon, mashma, it's aser, and now we're saying, vim heavy kasha. So l'chayr it's shver. Before we had said stamazai that it's no good, and now we say it's kosher. That which we say in the first price, where we said that it's going to be possible, there's only 4 tzitzis. So then then we say that you're not going to be Mekayim the din of min knaf with kla'ilon. So you have two of tcheles and two of kla'ilon. So they're all the same color. So that's the problem. We want it to, we hold it. Lamaisa, it's active that you have to have this which is this thing that we've determined that we want to have differentiation between the different colors. From the min knaf tells you they should be different colors, even though in this case it's all blue, but we still want them to be different. So therefore we don't want klayila. But the other one is talking about we have 8 tzitzis, you have 4 extra ones. So the first four you made with tcheles and with some other color, and then the extra ones you made with kla'ila. So on that, since those are not extra, so we're saying you shouldn't do it because of the possibility that you'll make a mistake and you'll mix it up. But you don't have the problem over here that it's puzzle because they're all the same color. Because the original 4 are good. The original 4 have tchelis and lava. Now, this is the Taisus asks. We had this the first Taisus in its parak. There's a very long Taisus. If you remember, we had a very long Amud at the beginning. He asked the question, why isn't this Moisef? How it should be puzzled altogether because you're being putting 8 in the place of 4 as being Moisef. So he make this very lamdish nafkaminas where a person is adding that there's a shita that you don't need. When we say 4, it's a minimum, it's not a maximum. It's not a specific number. It's saying you need to have at least 4. So it's possible even to be more.
And we're not worried at this point if you take it to another beged?
No, so we're saying it's kosher, but it's not. But you shouldn't do it. Before we said it was possible,
right?
So Rashi had said before that the reason why it was possible is because of this chash.
Yeah.
But we're saying now that chash is not a reason to passel. The psul is only because of having all the same color.
Got it.
The kosher, but you shouldn't do it is because of the chash that maybe it'll mix it up. So we still have the problem of the chash that you'll mix up the.
Then what's the difference between if you have 4 and 8 or 8 and 16? Like, what's the difference either way?
Well, no, because if you when you're talking about in the case where you have 16, right, or I don't know, you have 8 that really is 16.
Right.
So you're being yaitza with the first 4, and those first 4 had 2 separate colors. And now in the second 4, you have some that are tchela, that are kala ilan. I mean, it's hard to understand this because then what does this really have to do with a talus that's all tchelas? This could be even l'chayra a white talus, and if you're adding on extra 4, you could have tchelas and you should have the same chash. So that's a good question. I don't know why. I don't know why we would be bedafka in this case. So I think Tais has a whole different shot, but we're going. This is Rashi's shot. There's a extensive Rashi.
Basically, what we learn from here, when you try to get too much, you try to do too many things, it gets confusing. Stick with the basics.
Because you're asking a good question. I'm saying the reason why we're not going through the Taisus. If you go back to Chofes
I remember
and you look at that Taisus, you'll see why we didn't go through it.
Yeah,
I didn't go through it. It's just and back then I couldn't figure it out, and now it's counterproductive. Shamimino, but in any case, the reason why we brought this all here, Shamimino, matir mi beged lebeged. So we're saying the reason why you can't use kla'ilan l'chatchila is because that maybe you're going to take it and use it in a different tzitzis. We said you're not allowed to take it. It's disrespectful to take tzitzis from one thing and put it on another. We're talking about Einachanami, you're not allowed to do it, but he did it. Nevertheless, we're worried that people will do it even though you're not allowed to. And then they'll end up wearing shatnez, so therefore we answer it. I mean, it's hard to understand why this is a problem. right? They asked the Rechonim asked, like if you're talking about with eight tzitzis or 16 tzitzis, these are extra tzitzis. So what's the problem with taking them off? So yeah, so they have a complicated, it was something we haven't addressed, but that we're talking about where they're all together, and therefore you have to undo them. So you're gonna have to undo the first ones also.
Is there a problem of Shabbos because it's more than 4? Or even if it's two tamar and 2 pishtan?
So you're saying, why don't you have a problem right now if you took tzemer? No, because I think as long as you're being mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzis, there's no shatnas, right? And you have a regular tchelas, and you have linen thread, so you already have shatnas here. But it's mutter b'makam kiyam mitzvah tzitzis. But when you just have the kla ilan, you don't have real tchelas, so you're not being mekayim the mitzvah. Then you have a shatnas problem. But over here, even though there's 8 threads and these are not necessary, but you are lemaisa being mekayim mitzvah tzitzis. But you're asking it should be. You're suggesting that maybe because if it's not necessary, if you add on something like we said before, wherever it's possible to be mekayim without being over on shatnas, you have to do so. And this is really unnecessary. So I hear it's a good question. I think like we should start having boys wear tzitzis when they're bar mitzvah, and it would be much more interesting bar mitzvah pshatels. There's a lot very, very lumdisha and challenging. Like tefillin, they have to make it, I think, a little bit more interesting. They have to generate it. But this itself is interesting. Itma. Rav Amar. Ein matir mi beged lebeged. We're getting to this actual machlokes, Amoraim. Rav says you're not allowed to take tzitzis from one beged to the other. It's disrespectful. Shmuel Amar matirin mi beged lebeged. Shmuel said it's not a problem. You're using it for another tzitzis. There's nothing wrong with taking from the first tzitzis. Rav Amar ein madlikin miner lener. Rav says you can't use a ner Chanukah to light a different ner Chanukah. We are machmer like that. We use the shamish. Shmuel Amar madlikin miner lener. Shmuel says it's not a problem. Rav Amar ein halacha krib shimon begreira. If you remember all the way back 5 years ago or so, when we learned Hilchos Shabbos, Rav Shimon hold einim miskaven is mutter, and that's called the halacha of greira. The typical example of that is someone drags a bench and he might unintentionally make a plow, a furrow in the ground. So Rav Shimon says it's mutter. Rav says halacha is not like him. Shmuel Amar says halacha Rav Shimon begreira. Amar Rabbi. These are 3 machlokes where Rav is lechumra and Shmuel is lekula. Amar Rabbi kol milu demar avid karav. Rabbi says my Rebbe always passed like Rav levar mehani tlas to Ovid Shmuel. On these 3 things, he said like Shmuel. Matirin lebeged, madlika miner lener, v'alach Rav Shimon begreira. On all these 3 things, he passed like Shmuel. The Tanya, Shimon Omer, what is this? Halacha Rav Shimon begreira. Rav Shimon Omer, goyr adam mita kisa v'safsel. A person can drag a bed or a chair or a couch. Or bevashli iskaven lasas kritz. Even though it might make a furrow in the ground, as long as he's not intentionally making a furrow in the ground, it's mutter. Rav Yehuda, so he said that you're not allowed to use a tzitzis made out of kla ilan on your baged. Rav Yehuda, so Rav Yehuda was the different Amoraim was scared if they gave it to someone to do something with. To someone to clean, that they would rip it and they would be tchelis was very expensive. Like anything that goes in the Judaica store has a 4,000% markup. So they would just use the klai ilan. They would use some blue threads. So what did they do? Rabbi Yehuda masalei lekitra. He wasn't worried about it. He gave it to the cleaners. He said they're a Torah observant Jew. They're not going to do anything. Chanina avid leisisa. Rev Chanina would roll the tzitzis into a clump that would make it that it wouldn't rip, and therefore they wouldn't replace it. Ravina chayil lahu michit. He would tie it, he would sew it into a pouch to make sure that they didn't touch it. Tan Rabban, Chama chutin hu noisi. How many chutin are there in a tzitzis? Beishamai oimrim daled. Beishamai says daled, which is our familiar amount. Yisrael oimrim gimel. Yisrael says only 3. They argue he doesn't agree with the drasha that we said from Gedilim. Rather, he says Gedilim just means something that's braided, and braided is a minimum. You need 3 to make a braid. But kamatahei mishol sheles, they changed the lashon to mishol sheles. How much has to be hanging? How long does the string that hangs down past the gedil? Beishamai oimrim daled, Beisil oimrim gimel. Beishamai says it has to be 3 etzbois, and Beisil says 3. The gimel shebeishil oimrim achas me'arba betefach shekolada. This 3 etzbois that Beisil said are the kind of etzbois that you have 4 in a tefach of a regular person. So it means 3/4 of a tefach. Amra Papa, tefach da'iraisa, the tefach of da'iraisa, dalid begoidel is 4 thumbs, shis biktana, or 6 pinkies, or chamish the width we're talking about, or 5 tilsov, and 5 of the index finger, meaning the width of this. You have 4 thumbs widths, or 6 pinky widths, or 4 index finger widths. All of those are a tefach. Amar Rav Huna, dalid b'teich dalid. So the Rav Huna says, what's the psak of what do you need for a tzitzis? You have to have dalid, 4 tzitzis, 4 strings, which is really 8. B'teich dalid, it has to be within 4 etzbois of the edge of the baged, or mishul sheles dalid, and you have to have 4 etzbois of string of fringe. Yehuda passes differently. Amar Gimel, you need 3 strings, which is 6, like Beis Hillel. But Toich Gimel within 3 etzbois, Mishul Sheles Gimel, and the amount of string hang down has to be 3 etzbois. Amar Papa Hilchasa, what is a halacha? Hilchasa Dalid, you need 4 tzitzis, like we have 4, that's 8. The Toich Shalosh within 3 etzbois of the edge, Mishul Sheles Arba, and you have to have 4 etzbois of string. Remember this leishura. Does that mean to say that there is a minimum size of how long the fringe has to be for a minimum? Tzitzis ain't tzitzis ela yoitza. The word tzitzis means what's yoitza, what's sticking out. Ain't tzitzis, which means the fringe. Ain't tzitzis ela mashu. The tzitzis has to be a mashu. Kvar olu ziknei Beishamai v'ziknei Sil aliyas Yochanan ben Beseira. The Zkenim of Beishamai Sil went into the aliyah. For Amu tzitzis ain't lo shir. They say a tzitzis doesn't have a shir. Is any amount. Ki yotzei bar lulav ein bar shir. And similarly, a lulav doesn't have a shir. Ma'alav ein lo shir klal. Doesn't that mean that it could be any length? It could go from 0 to as much as you want. Loi ein lo shir l'mayla. What it means when they got together and said there's no shir, they said there's no shir of how high, of how long it could be. It can be as long as you want. Aliyeshel shir lamata, enechanami. It has to be at least 4 etzbois long. Dilay teima hachu ki yotzei ba lulav ein lo shir. How can you say a lulav doesn't have a shir? Shir hachanami de ein lo shir klal v'atnan lulav sheyesh by gimel tvachim k'dei l'nei by kasha. A lulav has to have at least 3 tvachim in order that you could shake it. That means it doesn't have a maximum, it doesn't have a shir. So too by the tzitzis, you can make it as long as you want. It has to be at least 4 etzbos. Okay, we'll stop over here. We'll continue with Shem at 10 to 8 tomorrow.
Thank you.
Good luck.